Um, Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted that we've been able to organise this event with Kirsten. But I'm delighted to have her join us at EY today for International Women's Day, and to tell us a little bit about her journey with Shared Threads and the story and the purpose behind Shared Threads, because I think it's a really important message for us to remember on such an important day internationally as well. So, Kirsty, do you want to start with telling us a little bit about your background before Shared Threads came into existence about 3 years ago?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me to start with. This is lovely. And it's good that we can do this in virtual form. Because last year on International Women's Day, I had about 50 women here spilled out into the corridor, all cutting out tiles and getting fabric ready to make pads. So it's a little bit different this year. But yeah, it's great to be able to do this. Shared Threads has been going about 3 years now. Well, exactly 3 years from when I kind of started with a few women around my kitchen table. And I suppose I have quite a strong background in creative workshops, and I wasn't an art teacher, and study textiles, and have that kind of love of fabric background, love of upcycling as well, and all things secondhand and nothing being wasted, and that whole like just gathering people together to make stuff is what I've been doing for years. It made sense to me whenever there was an idea to make pads to keep girls in school, that it was centered around community and people making together. Okay, not just a venture about creating these sustainable ways of helping girls stay in school, and so many other ways of changing people who menstruate their lives. But it was about for me so much about building community and gathering people around a creative project, because I just love that.
Yeah. And when we were chatting the other night in preparation for this, you talked about kind of what pushed you towards Shared Threads. So do you want to give people a little bit of an idea about kind of how that started?
Well, I suppose with all ideas that you tend to have, I had this one for quite a while, and it had been rattling around in my head for years probably, and thinking, oh no, somebody else can do this, But I think the way to get ideas out is usually to tell someone about them, and then they hold you accountable. So pretty much that was my daughter. Yeah, I told her, and then she kind of was on my back about it. She was the one who pushed me to start it, and it was actually around the time she was starting secondary school. That exciting time where she was so excited to be starting secondary education. That enthusiasm, that potential, like watching her start a new school and trying out all these new subjects and activities, and she like just that potential. I mean, with her education, she can be whatever she wants to be. She's 14 now. She can do whatever she wants with her life and be whatever she's going to be, because she's getting a good education. And the thought that there are so many girls in the world that's just not possible for, and because of a really simple limitation, like it's not a huge barrier. It's just this, for so many girls, it's just this one barrier that stops them going to school. And it's not even just those 4 or 5 days when they're on their period that they miss school. That's a lot of school to miss. Like I think we've all had a glimpse of what it's like for our kids to not be able to go to school this year, and it's not been pleasant. But it's nothing compared to that just being a way of life. Like our kids have been able to do this, be online, still continue things. It's not been great. It's not been great. I have 3 kids, and it's the sooner they get back to school the better. But it's not even those missing those 4 or 5 days like a lot of girls, once they hit their period, once they start menstruating, they just stop going to school altogether. You know what it'd be like. I know if my kids missed a week of school, they'd be nervous about going back. They'd have missed so much. And imagine that happened every single month. The girls just stop going. And it becomes a way of life then. They just don't go to school and they get tied up with whatever's going on in their village, working, helping the younger kids. And then that leads to all sorts of things as well, early marriages, early pregnancies, and, there's their education gone, those possibilities gone, all because they didn't have period pads and were able to get to school. They had to sit at home for those weeks and not be able to leave their house. So yeah, that made me angry when I realized that, and felt fortunate that for my kids that's not the case, but for so many women around the world, there's just this limitation that's put on them, and it's not fair. Yeah, so it made me angry. And I thought, if there's something we can do about this, even if it's just to change a few people's lives and give them those tools to help them get out of their house, get to school, each day, but yeah, that's kind of where it started. And I told some people my idea to make these pads definitely from secondhand cotton, because that's an important part of what we do. It's all secondhand, we have so much waste here. When I heard reports of girls having to manage their blood flow with newspaper or leaves. The girls I visited in India, one of them told me she sometimes used sand, to manage her blood, and then when we have all this waste, all this cotton, all this stuff that just goes to landfill, it made so much sense to me to,
So in the beginning, the purpose and the journey for Shared Threads was to support primarily in India.
Anywhere. I want to get pads to whoever needs them, and a lot of people need them. But my first connection was in India, mainly because I had friends who lived and worked there, and they immediately, when they heard what I was doing, because right at the start, we were a small group. We made we were making some pads, and I was sort of starting to look into how could we distribute these, and I also wanted to. I realized, from the start, I realized I don't want to just make these pads and send them. I want to make sure that they are distributed alongside good menstrual education, to make sure that education goes alongside of the distribution, because I knew that was lacking in so many places that we were going to send pads to. I know that in India, young girls don't get taught about their periods or their bodies. It's just not talked about in families, in school. There is just not that kind of education. There is this awful shame and taboo that surrounds it. It's women's issues and we just don't talk about it. And it's embarrassing, and you just stay in your house in the back room and you don't go anywhere, and we don't talk about it. And you don't know why it's happening to you, so imagine that fear, that like, what's going on? Like, nobody's explained this to me. So I wanted to make sure that when we distribute our packs, that wasn't the case, that it went alongside good education about what's going on with your body, that it's nothing to be ashamed of. And also talk about how to look after your menstrual health, even just how to wash the pads properly, those basic things. So yeah, whenever I had started to make some pads, our friends, our contacts in India immediately said, here you're making cloth pads, can you send us some? Because our girls don't have anything, they can't get to school, and they're using leaves, they're using old rags, they don't, can you send us a few packs out? So I was like, yes, yes we can. Let's talk about how we're going to do that. So yeah, that was a great way to get things started. And we have a little video actually from India, don't we, of
Are you
Jill,
happy that I played that now?
yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, go for
So please, everybody, bear with me to my
it. This is
computer skills. So Kirsty, do you want to introduce? This is Jill.
Yeah, this is Jill, who works for the charity in India that we deliver packs to. And I was lucky enough to go out and visit and stay with them 2 years ago and deliver the packs and, you know, all of the healthcare that was provided and everything. So yeah, this is Jill talking about the girls there, and there's some pictures of where the charity is based.
Okay.
With my family, worked and lived with Swarna Fellowship Trust, a charity based in the Nilgiri Hills of Tamil Nadu, which is in the south of India. We were there for about 8 years and have only just recently moved back to Northern Ireland. Smyrna is a locally run charity that is dedicated to helping disadvantaged members of the community to lead more enriching and fulfilled lives, providing anything from education, shelter, healthcare, employment to many hundreds of children and adults each year. One of our main aims is to help children, especially girls, complete their education, and in many cases encourage them to go on to second and third level education, which is just an incredible gift that often can break the chain of poverty in just one generation. There are so many hurdles that girls especially face and have to overcome to finish their education. Issues such as poverty and child marriage, a large patriarchal society, all these things make it very difficult and seemingly impossible, oftentimes just too overwhelming, a task for so many. And one of those very real life and ordinary hurdles is the fact that the majority of girls from age 11 or so on up will miss up to 5 days a month, every month, for the majority of their schooling because of the lack of resources many of their families face. I remember one of my first visits to a village deep in the Nilgiri Hills. We were doing our weekly social care visits where we were checking on the families that we sponsored, and dusk was quickly approaching, and we had finished our second cup of chai and eaten what seemed to be the 13th vada of the day. And we chatted to the shy and very smiley little girl, 8-year-old Triti, who had told us what her favorite subjects were in school and that she loved to read and what she wanted to be when she grew up. As we were getting ready to leave, someone in our team asked after one of the older daughters in the house, Bhavana, who we also supported, and asked if we could just say hello and see her. And there was a few whispered conversations and a few whispered sentences, and then an understanding nod. And we left with many a head jiggle and a smile. Then in the Jeep on the way home that evening, I discovered the very real toll that girls' menstruation takes for so many of our sponsor kids. My teammate explained that Bhavana had reached maturity and was on her period, that her family were too poor to provide women's sanitary products, and so every month she stayed home from school for the 4 or 5 days of her cycle, using old rags, sand, and sometimes dried leaves, confined to the dark back room of their tin hut because of the shame that was associated with women's issues. The work that Shared Threads is doing to help end period poverty is beyond measure. It quite literally is changing so many of these girls' experiences. With the arrival of our first period packs, we were able to gather nearly 80 of the sponsored girls for a day of educating them about their bodies, answering questions that they are often too ashamed to ask, and introducing them to what it means to embrace the beauty and the dignity of being a woman. Each girl left that afternoon, not only with a bag full of reusable, sustainable sanitary pads, but also with a bag full of hope. Hope for a complete education. Hope that they can understand and embrace their body. And hope that there is dignity in being woman.
Wow, that's a really powerful video, Kirsty, from Jill. And I think that really shows just how simple a product such as Shared Threads Mates can really make such a huge change and huge difference. How fantastic. And I know you had the pleasure of visiting Jill when you were in India, when she was in India as well.
I took all those photos.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your trip and what you learnt on that trip that's really fed into Shared Threads and how you've grown the
Yeah,
organisation?
I mean, oh, it was amazing to meet all those girls. That day we ran was fantastic. You know, it was great to get them all. We've had a whole day with them, and we had a meal and played games and showed them videos, and they got their packs. But they also there's this amazing nurse works with the charity who did the talks. And although they weren't in English, I didn't understand all of them. I had someone translating a bit, but you know, the way she was, you know, describing this, you know, our menstrual cycle and how just the health of it and the, you know, just about, yeah, just, you know, it not being something to be ashamed of and, you know, embracing it. I'm like, oh, it was wonderful to hear the girls get that message. And a lot of mums and grannies came that day, and clearly it was a message they had not heard before as well, and they had a lot of questions, a lot of simple questions that just made it very apparent how little they did know. Do you know, like one girl put her hand up and asked that because she talked about simple things like managing period pain and, you know, health and, you know, different types of foods that it's good to eat at that time of the month, and, you know, it's just simple stuff. One girl put her hand up and asked, you know, if I were to take paracetamol for my period pain, does that mean I can't have children? You know, that was the kind of questions that were, you know, so it's brilliant and so important, like I say, that education goes alongside of it.
I think you mentioned as well when we were chatting the other day about, you know, even in the nursing education in India that
yeah, Jill had a friend who had gone through her nursing training and they just skipped over that bit, menstrual health. They just, because even the teachers in the nursing hospital were too embarrassed to talk about it.
Which is,
you know, that says a lot, doesn't
incredible to think about, yeah. Because if you think about here, that's a massive form of support for women at times to speak to health and social care workers, and if that education's not happening either, where else do they go for support at that point?
But it's great that we can distribute our packs now, because what then started to happen, we started distributing them in India, and obviously I made sure that was well established within their charity, but then lots of other charities started to approach me saying, can you send us packs? And then I'm able to work with those organizations, and through their means of distribution and through their healthcare and their nurses that they have on their staff, able to deliver them in that way, which is brilliant, because that's something I can't do from here. So that's why it's great to be able to partner with different charities, and we've partnered now with so many, and getting our packs distributed in that way.
And you said at the beginning about, you know, it's about building community with purpose. So do you want to talk about the beginnings of it locally and what came out of the groups that you were beginning to set up? And
well, I mean, if you've ever been to a workshop with, you know, a bunch of women of all ages, you know, it's always great crack, you know. And that's the beauty of the groups. They tend to form in a local area, and then it's a real mixture of ages, you know. And like we were saying, you know, obviously they're not limited to just women coming along to our groups, and a lot of men get involved, but it tends to be women, you know. But it's beautiful when you see lots of different age groups gathering together, and I quickly realized that community side of it was so important, you know, and so lovely, because I think women really identify with this issue. And instead of just thinking, like we so often do with, you know, issues around the world, we just think, oh well, it's shame about that, there's not much we can do about it. And this is such it's such a tangible thing. It's such a physical thing that people can do and actually see a direct impact, you know. So as a group, and the way I set the groups up is very much in local areas. So so people are local to each other, they get together, everybody does their bit. Not everybody can sew, you know, and maybe a group of, say maybe a group of 12 or 15 people, there's maybe only 2 or 3 sewers, you know, because so much of the work is the cutting up, the bringing in of the donated fabric, the cutting up, the pinning, the organizing it all, the putting the poppers, you know, we put these wee poppers on the side of the pads, you know, there's all these wee jobs that need to be done. Look at that cool one, that nice colours.
And I have to say, I'm mightily relieved that they don't have to be sewers, because as you well know, my sewing ability leaves a lot to be desired, as my children and my husband will attest. My mother-in-law's so, so yeah, I'm glad to hear that, you know, the large portion of the groups are for non-sewers or non-creative types, as I would describe myself.
Yeah, it's about putting these packs together as a group. Everybody does their bit. Everybody is happy doing one bit or another. Someone maybe just does the ironing, comes on and does the ironing. You know, there's wee jobs for everybody and for all abilities as well, you know, because you can get, you know, I've had my 12-year-old son cutting up tiles, you know. You know, so anybody can get involved in a group and feel like they're doing something, they're part of a solution. They can see this story happening, they realize that there's a need, and that need can be met by relatively little cost for a group, you know, because everything is secondhand, everything's stuff we're throwing out, you know, and that's the beauty of it. That's why they end up being all these gorgeous colors, because you know, when you get donated secondhand cotton, it's never the same color. And they all end up being, you know, this wonderful. And that's the lovely thing as well, because when you've got a community of people who are making, and you've got some sewers in there, sewers, I know you're not a sewer, Sarah, but sewers tend to hoard fabric.
Yeah.
You know, I hoard fabric. So I can imagine when I am in my 70s, I will not be able to move in my house for fabric. So you've got these sewers who have hoarded fabric their whole life. They've, you know, scoured the charity shops their entire life and collected all this beautiful, you know, vintage, you know, gorgeous materials. And then they're thinking, I'm in my 70s now, how am I going to use all this? You know, I don't want it to go to waste. And the thought of, like, I have so many women come to me and go, I am so happy. This is what my family want me to clear out and get rid of all of this, but I am so happy that this is what it's being used for, you know, which is beautiful. And you've got this generations of material being put together by generations of women to be made into pads to be used. And there's something quite beautiful about that. Quite often I'll post, because I'm always taking photos of my pads, and I'll post pictures and people will message me and go, I recognize that was my granny's duvet, or, you know.
Very good. Yeah, and everybody has loads of old tiles, Kirsty. Everybody has old tiles clogging up their linen cupboard. Mine are falling out of it at the minute, I have to say. So yeah, you know, everybody can, you know, even if you're not a sewer and you don't have those beautiful fabrics, any tiles you have or anything like that can really go be used. Yeah. And I think one of the other points you talked about in the local groups was also the education piece, and how you know, and we discussed it the other day, like I think my mother handed me a leaflet and then had a little bit of a chat with me afterwards, you know, but I know my mum's generation and generations before that really didn't have a clue and didn't understand a lot of things. So
yeah, and that's a lovely, like I was talking about the workshop setting, and when you've got people together, making together, and doing maybe repetitive jobs like ironing or cutting up tiles or things, it lends itself so well to chatting, you know, and quite often that's what the groups end up chatting about, you know, because that's what they're sitting making. And you know, it needs to be something we talk about more in this country, is periods. We need to talk about periods more. We need to use the word period more. You know, I was saying to you the other day about my, you know, one of my pet hates of them being called sanitary products, as if for feminine hygiene, as if there's something unsanitary You know, and the words in even supermarket aisles, you know, you know, why not just say period products? That's what they are. That's what they're for. We need to talk about this more, and we need to break that cycle that maybe we grew up in a generation where this wasn't talked about. We need to break that cycle of it just being normalizing it, and you know, this is just something we talk about. It's you know, and that's why I'm really starting to trying to get groups started in schools at the minute, because I think it's a project to get involved in that lends itself so well to education. You know, groups in schools could learn, you know, you could learn so much alongside this project about, you know, female health, about the developing world, about period poverty, and about, you know, just, you know, all of these things combined, and just be talking about them more.
And we can break that cycle of having that to do. We can get the word period out there. We can, you know, push that. Yeah. So obviously, when you set up Shared Threads, it was all around your groups and the community. Mm-hmm. How has the last 12 months impacted you and your groups?
Yeah, hugely.
Yeah,
it's quite hard to, you know, run an organization that's based on gathering people whenever you can't gather people. Yeah. but my volunteers have stepped up. My groups and my volunteers are incredible, and you know, they just kept making.
Yep.
Because yes, a lot of the groups would meet once a month, once a week, whatever they have decided to do as a group, but they just kept making, and because they realized there was a demand still. Mm-hmm. You know, periods don't stop in a pandemic. Yep. And actually in this past year there's an even greater need. You know, I'm finding more requests overseas and locally as well. So the groups kept making, and in this beautiful way kept connected and kept running as groups, because they're set up in that way. They're all in like little WhatsApp groups and can chat away and can ping each other photographs of what they've made. You know, I've made these bags. Can you, if I leave them on your doorstep, will you put the drawstrings on them? You know, people passing things between each other's doorsteps and getting packs made anyway, in this lovely way of you know, when we've all been feeling pretty isolated and insular and suddenly just in our own homes, but these groups have kept going, kept connected, and kept, you know, involved in something outside of their own four walls, which has been incredible. And I've actually started new groups in the last couple of months. There's new groups started, and I've done it like this, got things started virtually, got all the materials and patterns to them, and they've started in their little communities and working in that same way, passing things to each other. So yeah, that's been really great. And yeah, and there've more groups starting, which is really, really positive. Oh, and I think you've a wee video, don't you? I
have one of your volunteers.
Lovely, wonderful Pearl, okay, who is our coordinates our group up the North Coast, Ballymoney.
Okay, just let me see if I can get this up.
So yeah, this is Pearl chatting, and there's some photos of just workshops and Shared Threads groups making.
Just bear with me 2 seconds while I get this.
She's worth waiting for, Pearl. She's made sure her group has kept going. In fact, when things opened up a little bit in the summer, she had a lovely gathering in her garden where her group got together outdoors, and which was really lovely. And had quite a few groups in Belfast do that as well. Had like tile cutting parties in their back gardens or which was brilliant.
Okay, I'm just sharing Pearl now.
Yay.
Hello, my name is Pearl. I've been involved with Shared Threads now for almost 2 years, and I coordinate a group up in the north coast here in Ballymoney. But yeah, we do have women mostly who come from all over the north coast, from Portrush out to Limavady, even the other side up around Cullybackey, and just locally as well, who come together and sew for shared threads. I should say that before restrictions came in place, we were probably meeting once a month, every 4 to 6 weeks. And those evenings, oh, we miss them. They were just so lovely. And women came together. It was very much come and go as you please, come for as long as you can, and do what you can. And yeah, the kettle was always on, and there was always a cuppa on the go and a bit of a chat. But we did do some work. Not everybody who came could sew. We had jobs for everybody. People came to sort materials, all of which had been donated to us, which was wonderful. So really very little expense to it. So we had people who sorted our cottons and our tiling, and others who cut out, some who drew round templates for us, some who pinned together. And then we did have 4 or 5 women who brought their sewing machines, and they were able to go ahead and sew up the pads and the pad holders and bags once they were ready for sewing. And you know, it was all ages of women. We had young teenagers who came with their mums some evenings, and they were able to do tracing for us, or do some cutting out, or even put the little poppers on for us. And at the other end of the scale, I had women in their 80s who also were able to come, and it was just such a lovely part of being together and community. And well, we like to think it was nice and friendly and chatty, and certainly there was, as I'd say up here, good crack. Then this time last year, restrictions came, lockdown happened, and you know, initially it was very gutting that we couldn't meet together, and I suppose things came to a halt for a short time. But then we realised actually a lot of this could be done at home. I was able to sew at home, people could cut out at home, and so before very long we were dropping little packages on each other's doorsteps. I was dropping packages of material to people who could cut out and trace, and then they would drop them off to somebody who could pin them together, who would then drop them back to me for sewing, or I would drop them on to one of the other ladies who was sewing. And to be honest, maybe I think in the past year we've been maybe more productive, because I suppose we've all been indoors and we've been so little else we've been able to do, that we've been able to do a lot of sewing for shared threads. And you know, it's just lovely because you're doing something that's purposeful, that's meaningful, and actually, you know, we're actually making something that will change women's lives. And we're actually making it from waste tiles that we would be throwing out, or bed linen that we're finished with. And there's just something really lovely about that, to know that yeah, that we're making something from waste. And you know, the nice thing is, it's not down to me totally on my own, or any of the ladies on their own. We're very much part of a team, and we come together, and one person does what they enjoy doing, and another does what they enjoy doing. And yeah, and then another lady just at the beginning of lockdown, or a few months into lockdown, sent me a monetary gift and said, look, I'm not out in my car, I'm saving on my petrol money, and I want to donate this to Shared Threads, so buy pants or waterproof material or whatever. And really, those are the only things we've ever had to buy. I've had ribbon donated, I've had thread donated, any amount of material and tilings donated. So it's just been great, and there's no doubt it has just been lovely. We're part of a little WhatsApp group, and we just keep in touch with each other. And in these days of just social isolation, it's just been lovely to be part of the Shared Threads community.
And lovely to talk about the ability to connect in this time of social isolation, and what they have done as a group to keep in touch with each other, and to keep your charity going, and your purpose and mission. Because it, you know, apart from the fact that you couldn't get the ladies together in their groups, you couldn't train them in the groups the way you had in the past, it also meant a lot of things stopping for you over the last 12 months. A lot of your funding from workshops. I mean, I went to one of your wreath making workshops last Christmas, which was just lovely. Christmas 2019, before all this, and was coming to your Easter one last year, and then it all had to kind of be
Yeah,
Jane.
we had to cancel a lot of fundraising events and a lot of workshops, because that's another way that I bring in funding to, you know, because an enterprise like this doesn't run, although we use a lot of secondhand materials, you know, there's a lot of cost goes into running what we do, and that's how I bring in money usually, is by running creative workshops, like you said, the wreath making that we did. So yeah, that was a bit of a blow whenever we weren't able to do that anymore, but you know, we'll get back to that. And you know, in the meantime, in the past year, we've just had to think of other ways to bring in money to keep us going. So we had some merchandise that people can buy, which has been great. I worked with a local artist who actually designed, I'll show you, designed this lovely stitched image that we've put on our calendars and on our bags. So yeah, she does this lovely way of drawing with threads. See what we did there? It's with threads. And she based that on a photo that I took of a woman in India.
And your groups are all over Ireland at the minute,
Yeah,
north and south.
Yeah. And actually before lockdown, I was ready to start some groups in Scotland and England as well. So hopefully that will get up and running once things open up a bit. But at the minute, groups are getting started in Northern Ireland, and that's what I really hope, is that we start getting more groups dotted around the country, that there's always a local group for somebody to get involved in, you know. It is a matter of, how do I get involved? Well, find your local group, and you can can join in with the making, or you can donate materials to them, or just whatever you want to do. That's where your local group is. And it also means people can feed into local groups, because not everybody wants to commit to coming to a group, you know, on a regular basis. They might just want to help for a while. Or, I mean, I've had some girls volunteer with me this year, who are doing their Gold Duke of Edinburgh Award. So they've been volunteering with me this year as the volunteer part of their Duke of Ed. So that's maybe just a temporary, volunteers that are just there for a short period of time. But if there are local groups established, then people can feed in and out and be part of it.
Yeah, you were telling me about one of your local groups you just recently set up, the South Belfast one, and it started off with kind of 6 or 8 people, did you say? And has even in a matter of weeks grown quite substantially.
Oh yes, yeah. We only started last week, and now there's 15 of them already, and they ended up knowing each other. I did a live chat like this to get the group started and kind of explain how to get things running. And usually when I start a group, obviously I go in person and do a workshop and show how to make the pads and do sewing demonstrations and everything. But I've made kind of quite detailed videos instead to help people get started. And then I have a chat with the coordinator of each group to get their group started and coordinate. Coordinators don't even tend to be sewers, because to coordinate a group, you end up maybe just keep watching what everybody's doing and passing things from. At the minute, my coordinators like Pearl are generally just dropping bags off at each other's doors. But yeah, the new Belfast group started last week, and 2 of the members that came on hadn't met each other, and they ended up living 3 doors down from each other.
Brilliant. They're definitely building.
They were very local.
Yeah, definitely building your community.
But yeah, they're grown to 15, 20 already in just a week or 2.
Right. And one other thing, you kind of touched on it there with the collaboration with the local artist on your bags, but actually that's been really important for you, the collaboration that you've had with other social entrepreneurs and artists across the province as you've developed. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the network you've built there and how what you found from that?
Yeah, I think there's some really lovely women's networks of particularly women entrepreneurs or that run small businesses or whatever. And I think Northern Ireland is a really beautiful place to see how well that works, because, we're a small enough community that, you know, people do know who's doing what and everybody supports each other. And I think especially in this past year, that has been vital for so many people, and it's a lovely thing to be able to support. And, you know, I get a lot of support from local businesses, organizations. You know, our calendar, for example, each page is sponsored by a local business, you know, each month,
Yep.
which is, you know, fantastic. And also we've been building a lot of connections with local organizations to distribute pads locally as well, particularly since the pandemic hit. There's been a lot more need locally. We've just supplied our first batch of pads to Bloody Good Period, who are an organisation based in London, and they supply period products to refugees and asylum seekers right across the UK, and they deliver them with really great menstrual education as well. They have a really good network set up where they deliver their products, and they're trying to really encourage reusables and cloth pads at the minute, you know, because it is a really sustainable way, you know. That's the beauty of pads like this, is when you have your own supply of them, you don't need to worry about where your period products are coming from next month or the next month, you know. That's sustainable. You just wash them and you use them again. So yeah, we just supplied our first batch.
And you're being quite modest there, because your first batch was quite a large number to order.
Hopefully it'll be more. Hopefully these ones will be delivered quickly and we'll get more out. But we've also had packs go out to food banks here in Belfast as well, and 3 other organisations, for example Flourish NI, that work here in Northern Ireland with women who've been trafficked here. So they've asked us for some packs as well. So yeah, there's been a lot more demand for our pads here as well, which is, you know, we want these pads to go to wherever there's a need, whether that is locally or overseas. So we just keep making them.
That's amazing. I mean, it's amazing to think that the towels that are sitting in people's closets or the old bed linen could be helping somebody so close to home as well as so far away. I mean, I think there's something really quite sad about the fact that we still need them to help people in Northern Ireland or across the UK. But it's fantastic that you're filling that gap. And,
you know, I think period poverty is sometimes something that's associated with the developing world, and it's not. It's very real in the, you know, here as well.
How can people get involved? What do they need to do? How can they donate materials to you, or kind of join groups, or if there's not a group in their area, what can they do?
Yes, there's so many things you can do to get involved. You can you can join a group in your local area. You can get a group started. Get in touch with me if you think it's something that you would like to get started. As I say, you do not have to be a sewer. You could start a group as a non-sewer and build a little community around it and get people making. You do not have to be a sewer yourself. You can find a local group that you want to donate if you've got, you know, materials to donate to. You know, we do need a constant supply of secondhand towels and cotton, and we use a nice like brushed cotton or flannel on the tops of the pads to make them nice and soft against your skin. So we need a constant supply of that. So donating to a local group, brilliant. You could support us financially. As Sarah was pointing out, this past year has been difficult, and there's so many ways people can support us financially. You can be a Shared Threads patron, where you can donate a little bit of money every month, which just really helps us keep things going, helps us get pads out to people who need them, you know, paying for shipping and all of those things that need money to go towards. So you could donate money. There's a donate button on our website. There's, you know, you could be a patron. You can just follow what we're doing, follow us on social media, subscribe to our newsletter, so you know, we want to find out more. you could buy some of our merchandise to help us financially in that way. And then just other things to help with what we really believe in doing. You can just talk about periods more. Simple things like that, trying to break these barriers of taboo and shame that I talk about in India, but are very real here as well. So normalizing talking about menstruation, using the word period more, that's something you can do, right there. No, thank you for having me.
Great, thank you all, and happy International Women's Day, everybody.